Hi, I'm Michael Chameides. I'm the mayor's aide here at the City of Hudson. So I've been working with Mayor Johnson since he came into office on January 1st, 2020. Here I am in City Hall as the mayor's aide, and my role is really to support the mayor and all the everything that he does in his role, and really especially to sort of support important initiatives. So I serve on the Downtown Revitalization Initiative Committee, which is a project where the city is managing four important capital campaign improvements in the Bridge District. We're working on some really important affordable housing initiatives. I also serve as the city's ADA coordinator to ensure that our city becomes more accessible and also follows the laws around ADA compliance. And I think the sum total for a lot of the projects that we're doing here in the city is a vision for a more equitable city, where we want to make sure that all of our residents have important opportunities to advance their lives, to be able to survive, to be able to stay here, to be able to thrive as they live here in the city of Hudson.
Okay, let me throw a question. What do you think is the biggest challenge today for residents in Hudson?
I think the biggest challenge is affordability, and to be able to thrive in our economy. And so there are some national and global changes that have taken place that directly affect Hudson in terms of sort of the loss of industry jobs, the sort of rise of the service economy. And what that has meant is that it's much more difficult now to have a living wage income, than it was decades ago. At the same time, we've seen this surge of housing costs, and that is a national trend, but it's especially true here in the city, where rental prices and home ownership prices have really skyrocketed over the past decade. So what we're seeing is sort of this loss of wages, while costs for housing as well as costs for other goods and services are increasing. So it's much more difficult to sort of be able to survive and thrive here. And at the same time, there's these other trends around the importance of high level of education, high level of training in order to sort of get opportunities to advance. And so I think a lot of our residents are having a difficult time to be able to find the opportunities they need to be able to thrive. And so I think that is sort of the thread that we're seeing in the city of Hudson, as well as across the country, but it is particularly important here. And so a lot of the initiatives that we're looking at, I think, kind of boil down to some of those issues. So our affordable housing is one piece of that. Developing job opportunities and economic opportunities is the other side of that. I think the work that we're doing around ADA accessibility is also a similar component, where we're trying to figure out how can people live and survive and sort of do their basic, have their basic human rights honored here in the city. Attached to that is also a sort of an important initiative around making our streets more walkable and more bikeable. And these are sort of, to do it right, it's incredibly expensive, and I think the city the city is behind where it needs to be, much like in housing, is that we haven't made enough progress around housing or around walkability over the past decade. So there's a major lack that's sort of built up over this time, and so it's very difficult to sort of catch up quickly, but at the same time, those needs are very urgent. So I think those are sort of what we see as sort of the most challenging things. There are all these problems that sort of have been brewing for a long time, and we haven't taken action. That we're excited about moving forward. At the same time, I think if we project what are going to be the challenges 10, 20, 30 years from now, we have to start taking action now to sort of think about those things. And so clearly, climate change and environmental catastrophe, it's already affecting us, but it's going to be so much more intense as we look ahead. So at the same time, we're trying to tackle these issues around affordability. We also have to be thinking about sustainability, especially as it pertains to the waterfront, to the development of the waterfront. We have to think about how sea level rise might affect flooding in that area, as well as what we can do to sort of be reducing our carbon footprint as a city. So, and that's also, again, sort of a major initiative that we need to start, taking some significant steps on during this administration, so that we're not regretting that we didn't take this action 10, 20 years from now.
Mm-hmm. There seems to be sort of a dichotomy going on here in Hudson. The real estate boom, I think, is happening, particularly with Airbnb. But then I've talked to a lot of, particularly minority people, say, I was born here, I grew up here, I don't know if I can live here in the next 5 years. I don't know if I can afford it. What can we do for these people?
Yeah, I think the government's primary responsibility has to be to our residents, and people need to feel that that this is people who grew up here and people who live here currently need to feel like this is their home and that they have a future here and they also have a present here. So I think that we need to be looking at sort of who is benefiting from the changes that are happening in Hudson, who are who get to be part of the decision-making process, and we need to really make sure that we're living up to our democracy, that everybody who lives here has a say in our future, and that they can picture themselves as part of that future. And so that's a really key component, is that really deep down emotionally, people need to feel like that they have opportunities here in the future and that this is a place for them. And in order to give them that emotional experience, we do need to sort of put some concrete things in play so that there is a future of affordable housing and there's a future of job opportunities. And we have seen this major economic boom in the city, but it hasn't necessarily distributed to everybody. Mm-hmm. And we know that trickle-down economics doesn't work. It's sort of a fantasy that was that people have sort of bandied about, but study after study shows that money doesn't necessarily trickle down. So we can't just sort of look at any financial transaction as meaning that everyone benefits. I think there are ways to sort of leverage economic opportunities and make sure that everybody sort of gets a piece of the pie and that everyone does benefit. So I think there are ways to do that, but you can't just assume that the market will automatically trickle down and that everyone will benefit. And so I think that's those are the steps that we need to be able to be thinking about and taking, is how do we make sure that people have access to all this opportunity. And so and clearly not everyone is benefiting, and I think so we need to be able to take steps to make sure that everybody does have a future here.
Okay. Every new office holder, particularly you and Kamal Johnson, or a new mayor, usually have a 100-day plan.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys have something like that? Things that you really want to get to in the next 100 days?
We haven't really focused on the first 100 days. I think that what we often found is that government is slow moving, and so I think what we tried to do right off the bat is establish that that we're interested in hearing from and talking to anybody, and that we've had a bunch of meetings. We want to make sure that people feel like they're included in the government and in the process, and that people have access to us. So I think we want to establish that very early on, and I think we've done that. I think we also know that there are some really critical projects that we knew we wanted to show progress on, and so I think the results of the DRI committee is one example of that, where the project had sort of stalled out, and we had made sure that within the first month that things were moving forward, and there's some very important capital projects that are going on. Same thing with for me around ADA compliance is that there are a number of things that the city needs to do to improve accessibility, and so we have right off the bat taken steps to improve that and put a longer term plan in place. The mayor also announced last week a new affordable housing development. There's going to be 80 units on 7th Street, which is a massive improvement. It's going to take a long time to see the project to fruition, but it is something that got announced within the first 100 days, and it's not enough. We actually need to do a lot more around affordable housing, but it is a step in the right direction, and it's taking a property that is currently not being used and adding not only 80 affordable units, but also we'll have some commercial space, so that some other economic opportunities will be there as well.
Mm-hmm. How do you work with Kamal Johnson, our new mayor? Are you guys sort of a tag team, or how does this thing play out?
Well, I think one of the things that the mayor's really good at is in terms of his leadership style is I think he makes it really easy to contribute, and I think he's someone who brings people together and he empowers them to sort of to do their best work and to sort of run with projects. And that has been my experience with the mayor is that there's a lot of opportunities to sort of pass projects back and forth. And also, if I have ideas that I think like he is really helpful in sort of in enabling me to sort of move forward as best as possible. The reality is there's a lot of projects to do for, my role as mayor's aide is part-time. You add the mayor to 1.5 people to run, to be running the mayor's office in the city of Hudson. There's an enormous amount of work, and I think there's really way too much work to do than what 1.5 people can do. And so I think the only way we're going to be successful is by pulling in other people. And I think the mayor has done a good job of sort of empowering the commissioners that he's appointed. He appointed a really great team of people to serve as commissioners, which are volunteer roles. And I think he's done a good job of sort of giving them direction and also letting them use their expertise to carry out some of the important initiatives. And as well as sort of other staff in the city, and also to be able to allow volunteers wherever to sort of have project ideas and advance them forward. So that's sort of how I would describe, his leadership style and the way we work together is that he's very easy to get along with. I think the other quality that I've noticed is that he has very little interest in political drama, and as oftentimes happens in the city, I think there's oftentimes can be sort of people can get distracted because of like sort of bad blood or long-term relationships or people have conflict. And I've been in a number of meetings where he kind of just puts an end to it and reminds everybody about why we're here, and we're really here to serve the residents of the city and to move things forward. And there's really not time for a bunch of bickering and back and forth. And so I think it makes meetings a lot more comfortable. Is that I feel like when we have meetings, they're efficient and we get things done and we move on.
Great. I think that just about covers it. Any final thoughts? Final comments you want to put out there?
Yeah, I guess I would just share how exciting it's been for me to be serving as mayor's aide. I've learned so much about the way the city functions, and I've met a lot of really great people. And I also serve on the county board of supervisors and the county legislature, and so it's been really fun to sort of compare and contrast the way that the county functions versus the way the city functions, and sort of meet a group of new people. And at the same time, I've gotten to sort of take my interests, which is oftentimes which is about providing really good services, about affordability, and I also am excited about sort of just how things work and how things function and making improvements. And so it's been a great opportunity for me to be here, to be working with a great team of people, and to be serving the residents of Hudson.
That's great. Thank you, Michael. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Good.